Hi, my name is Gerhard Schwartner, and welcome to Selling Power TV. Today, we have the great pleasure of meeting with Michael Pedone. He is the founder and CEO of SalesBuzz.com. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, nice to see you again, Gerhard.
So I have a very simple question for you. What can salespeople do in sales organizations to double sales in the next 6 months?
Very simple. Start recording your sales reps' calls and listen to them. The thing is this, when it comes to selling by phone, and it doesn't matter what you sell, you could be like, I have clients like 3M that are selling multi-million-dollar deals. I have small businesses, selling 500 to 1,000, 5,000 and everything in between. And they all have one thing in common. When you're using the phone and you're starting that conversation, you have to make sure your sales reps know exactly what the game plan is, what the strategy is before they ever pick up the phone. And they should know exactly what the steps are and how to execute them. And the best way to find out if they really do that is to simply record their calls and listen to them, and then know what the steps are. See, the managers have to understand what are the steps. A lot of times the sales manager who is a top sales rep, when they get promoted to being a sales manager, they struggle because they had this natural intuition, right? When they were very effective on the phones, they were being really good, and then their company promotes them. Now they're the manager, but maybe they're not getting the best out of their team. And a lot of times it's because they had intuition of what to do, but you can't teach intuition. But if you get a sales manager or a sales director or VP of sales that will break down the sales call into many steps, and then they make sure that their reps are following those steps on there, sales are going to increase. It's really that simple. You don't have to spend a lot of money on all this other stuff. You don't have to try to figure out what the perfect cadence is and all this other. You just have to make sure that when they get them on the phone, they know exactly what to say, why to say it, how to say it, what to do with the response, and what to do next.
So what are the typical steps in a sales process?
Yeah, I'll break down what the perfect sales call is. The very first step is when you're making a sale. The first things first is, one, you have to build a list of pre-qualified suspects, right? So every sales rep should know what characteristics does a lead have to make them be considered a suspect to even reach out to, right? So you have to know that to begin with. That should be basic number one. All right, so let's say you have that. You got a couple of leads there. They match the profiles, your ICP, your ideal customer profile, and you're about to pick up the phone. Well, you need to know, first of all, the very first thing a sales rep has to understand is it is not their job to close every lead they call. That's not their job. Their job is to close as many qualified prospects as fast as possible. And you cannot qualify a lead until you talk to them. I know a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, well, they're in the right industry, they have the right title, they're qualified. They're not fully qualified until you have that conversation, because there's other factors that are going to go into this, right? So when you have this list and you know what your objective is, the first thing I try to tell salespeople is this: just call to see if you can help. Have that mentality. Just call to see if you can help them. And then now when it comes time to pick up the phone, you need more than that. You can't just say, well, I'm going to call, see if I can help, and just wing it. Because Captain Wing It's when there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, sales reps are great, right? They're Captain Winging it, they're doing whatever. But when the low-hanging fruit starts to dry up, that middle, they don't know how to climb that tree. That's when they run into problems. That's when sales numbers dip. So to go back to making sure they're making the perfect sales call, it's very simple. One, they have to know when they're about to pick up the phone, the first step is their opening value statement. They have to know how to pique interest and gain permission within the first 15 seconds of that call. It's really that simple. And a lot of people say, well, the phone doesn't work. They do social selling now and things of that nature. Gerhard, I don't care if you use the phone, if you use email, if you use LinkedIn, you can send smoke signals. I don't care what you do to get the prospect on the phone. Getting the prospect on the phone is the easy part. And a lot of people are having so much trouble with it now, but it is actually the easy part. You have so many different tools compared to when you and I first got into sales, right? There was a phone book and a phone, go, right? Now you have the internet, you have all these ways you can get a hold of them, you have social media, et cetera, but it's getting the conversation started is step one. And so whether you're sending a tweet or you send a LinkedIn message or you send an email or you use the phone, you have to capture their attention to get them willing to want to have a conversation with you. And the best way has been proven to use the phone to do that. So your first step is, if you call, they answer the phone, you have to pique interest and gain permission to continue the call. What does that mean? What it means is, the old way of selling would be to try to take control. Do you remember back in the 80s, 90s, selling by phone, right? You were taught to get them on the phone, start asking probing questions, really take control, and then guide them down this path. And that just doesn't work today. It didn't really work then. You had to be really good to make it work then, okay? But there's a much better way. If I called you and I said, Garrett, there's a possibility I might be able to help SellingPower increase its memberships by about 10,000 people this year, but I would just need to ask you a few questions first to be sure. Would that be okay? Even if you like your knee-jerk reaction is to say no, you're probably going to want to know, okay, how could you do that for me? Sure, I got a second, go ahead. And now you just give, okay, great. Now, so I use an opening value statement that piques that interest, gains permission. Most salespeople mess the call up from here now. Because now that the prospect goes, yeah, I got a second, go ahead. They're like, okay, what do I do next? And so then they show up and throw up, or they start data dumping. And that's, so when I break the sales process down like this. Step one, you're on home plate, you're in the batter's box, peak interest, gain permission, continue the call. They say, yes, you're on first base. Now I got to get the second. Well, how do I do that?
So well, what is your first step? Or what is your value statement when you sell yourself?
Sure. So it was exactly what I just said to you there. So if like, and I just made it up on the fly, right? But I'm using my formula that I teach this in the course, right? But it teaches you how to create an customized opening value statement. So the one I gave for you was, so Garrett, it's Michael at SalesBuzz. The reason for my call is a possibility I might be able to help increase your subscription rates by an additional 10,000 over the next 12 months. I just need to ask you a few questions first to be sure. Would that be okay? If I'm calling a sales director, for me, it could be something like, the reason for my call, I specialize in helping outbound sales teams overcome call reluctance. And if I caught you at a good time, I'd like to ask you a few questions to see if what we have to offer maybe some help to you. Would that be okay? I get very few people saying no to that, right? Because it's so like, I don't even care when I do it. When somebody does say no, I don't even care at that point, right? Because I'm getting such a high level of people that are saying yes. And so I also have,
what is step two? Let's say they say
okay,
yes.
Perfect. Yeah, so step two is, so you're done with phase one of the selling, you're on first base, you're done with phase one. There's 4 phases of the selling cycle, right? There's the openers, the second phase is qualifying. But so the opening value statement, phase one had 2 steps: peak interest first, gain permission, right? Now I'm done with that. Qualifying step, the phase 2 is qualifying. There's lots of little steps of qualifying, much more than the first one. But the very first thing you have to do when they say yes is, don't forget, they just gave you permission to ask them some questions. I have to ask an engagement question. An engagement question is going to place your prospect's attention in an area that you want them thinking about. Why? Because you want to ask a couple of questions that are going to uncover if a problem exists. Because if there's no problem, they're not going to want to listen to a solution, let alone pay for a solution, if they don't agree that there's a problem there.
So in your case, you would say, can you share with me what you've noticed when it comes to call reluctance in your sales force?
Actually, what I use, and I teach this as well in the course. I like to give 2 examples, and again, it's highly customizable. So one option would be this: if you go, yeah, I got a second, go ahead. I might say, okay, well, Garrett, the first question, I think I already know the answer, but let me ask this: when it comes to your sales team, are they doing outbound cold calling, or are they handling inbound warm leads?
Easy.
Now you could say they're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing a combination, or they're not doing anything, they're doing this. It doesn't matter how you answer. We're engaged now in a sales conversation. The guard is down, your ears are up, we're communicating, and I got you focused in an area I need you thinking about, right? So you can say, oh yeah, we're doing traditional cold calling, or we're handling some inbound warm leads, or we're doing a little bit of both, right? So whatever it is, and then the next question is your opportunity size question. Your opportunity size question is, as a sales rep, you want to quickly find out what is the potential opportunity size here. If I'm selling shipping and or if I handle shipping and I'm in truckloads, right? I might want to find out when I get the person on the phone. Second question is going to be, I'm just out of curiosity, how many shipments are you doing a month or a week or a quarter or whatever, right? If it's sales and I'm helping sales teams, so I just asked you my engagement question, you gave me an answer. So now I go to my second question, which is going to be opportunity size, and I'll go, great, just out of curiosity, how many sales reps do you have? Right? Now if he goes 1, okay, I'll still help, but that call is going to be a lot shorter than compared if they go, well, we got 20, or we got 10, or we have 100, right? But at least I know real quick. So once I'm done with that so I got my engagement question, opportunity size, we're still having that conversation. And now the third question is where it gets to the pain point. See, you as a sales rep, The reason why you have to build that ICP list, you should know what the top 2 or 3 problems that they would have to have in order for them to be interested in your solution. They might not recognize the problem at first. That's why they're a cold lead. If they already recognize the problem, they would have Googled for a solution. They would have found you, would have been an inbound warm lead. That's the only difference between a cold call and a warm lead. They've already recognized the problem. They're doing the research. But listen, I've made over 10,000 cold calls, successful cold calls in my career, probably about 100,000 of them. And the one critical linchpin to all of it is knowing that you have to, I cannot call a prospect and tell them they have a problem because they're going to doubt it. They're going to get resistant. But I also know that if I'm going to increase my chances of them wanting to go to that next step or learn more about what we can do and have a chance of earning their business, I got to get them to recognize a problem. So once I pique interest, gain permission to continue the call, ask my engagement question, I ask the opportunity size question, it's now time to start agitating the pain, scratching the itch. And I have to know what are the top 2 or 3 problems my prospects would have to have. So if I'm calling a sales director, I might say something along the lines, after they tell me how many sales reps they have, I might go, well, just like, so your sales reps, are they struggling with this or are they dealing with that? Right. So I like to give these two options, and they answer no matter how. It's usually it's this, it's that, or it's none of those, it's this. And whatever that answer is, then they're starting to recognize there's a problem. Does this make sense so far?
Absolutely. So the question would be like, not knowing your business. Can you help me understand whether your salespeople are struggling more with cold calls or with creating value statements?
Actually, so I don't want to put that on. So my question is more along the lines of, so listen, the clients, this is my exact, what I say, you ready? So listen, the clients I help the most, Garrett, I mean, the ones that really get the highest ROI possible for what is it we have to offer, their team is usually struggling with one of 2 issues. It's either that, they're struggling to pick up the phone. They have call reluctance, right? Because they're tired of hearing things like, no, thanks, no, understood, we're all set responses, right? So that's one issue. The other issue is where they don't have a problem picking up the phone. They're making tons of dials. The issue is they're burning through good leads and they're not setting enough appointments. They're not getting deep enough into the call. So, I mean, out of those 2 scenarios, which would you say best fits your team situation?
Nice.
And so now they'll go, oh, well, it's this, it's that, or it's a combination of those, or it's a little bit of both. And then whatever they say, if it's a problem, it's the first, second, or a combination, I go, man, it's really, I call this a grenade play. Man, it's really hard to hit quota when that's happening. It's a grenade play because I shut up for a second and they go, yeah. And then they realize what I said. They're like, yeah, it really is hard to hit quota when that's happening. So now they're like, this is why we're not hitting quota. These guys are suffering with this, we're suffering with this. So now we're starting to get problem recognition. And this is only the first third part of qualifying, right? Because they have to establish, is there a problem there that we can help them solve? And these are the kind of problems that my best clients have that we solve. Are you running into them? But notice I word it in a way that's a sales conversation. By the way, I know all of these things before I ever pick up the phone. I guarantee you you're gonna have sales directors watching this video that they're gonna think back, they have some veteran sales reps out there who just wing it every time. And again, if they're doing well, that's great. But when you're hiring new sales reps or even people that have been there for 5-10 years and they're struggling, that's why I said my first thing was listen to their sales calls, record their calls. Do they have a structured process? Do they know what to do and why, and what question they're asking? And does it make sense? The biggest problem I had when I first got into sales, I would learn from this person and this person and this person. They would all give advice, but they never gave the reason behind it. Sales reps, to be successful, there really is, I mean, listen, there's a science to selling, but it's not rocket science. And so when you map out all the steps and you show a salesperson, these are the steps, everything's customizable to your industry, but no matter what you sell, these are the steps that are gonna, like baseball, you gotta go to first base, second base, third base before you can score a run, right? In that order. When you show them what the steps are and you explain why those steps are there and how to execute it, they retain it more. And once they retain it and it makes sense, the light bulb goes on, then they can go out on the phones. They have more confidence. They start following the program. They start getting better results. They're having more conversations. Sure, they're making less dials because they're having more conversations. So instead of making 100 dials a day, they might be making 60, but they're having 3.5 hours of talk time. And they're filling their pipeline and they're shortening the sales cycle because they're not skipping steps and they're only putting deals in there that have a really good chance of closing. Right. And
so
the good news,
let's go back. We we help the customer recognize the problem and admit that it's hard to make quota. And you said that's the first third. What's the next third?
right. Okay, perfect. So once I get problem recognition, right, I want to make sure that I have to identify who this person is as a decision maker. Too many sales are lost because the salesperson assumed that they were a decision maker based on that person's title or their role in the company. Right. So if you have a sales rep that if you're a sales director and you're listening to this video and you have salespeople that say, yeah, they know they're speaking to a decision maker, and I go, okay, then have they ever heard this when they go for a close? Well, I have to check with so-and-so. Okay, well, if you have, one of two things is happening. They're either telling the truth or they're lying, right? The prospect is either telling the truth or they're lying. So that means you messed up when you did the qualifying earlier, or you just assumed that they were that person. So the second phase of the qualifying is once you get problem recognition, then you can go into identifying their role. You have to understand there's 5 roles as it relates to a decision maker. For every prospect you ever speak to, they will fit into one of 5 roles as it relates to their role in the decision-making process. They're either the ultimate decision maker, they're part of the decision-making team, they're an influencer, they're an end user, or they're an info gatherer. The bottom 2 have no power whatsoever. The third one, the influencer, usually happens on inbound warm leads, right? And a lot of times when you get an inbound warm lead, see, this is why this phone sales training that I'm talking about works with outbound and inbound, because you have to follow the same process. If you get an inbound lead, too many deals are lost because the salesperson was so happy that an inbound warm lead showed interest. They skip all the steps. They jump right to the demo or whatever, or the quote. They send it out, had no idea that that person was an intern or was just asked to look into it, and it went out for 3 other bids and you lost it by $100. Where if you would have asked a couple of questions, you would have found out who this person was. And if you found out they weren't the right decision maker, or they were just an intern or something, or they were an info gatherer, and as long as you knew what to do when you found that out, you get the decision makers involved. Now you win the deal and you might even be able to sell it for a higher cost. This is all about learning how to sell and following that process. So that's the second phase, is identifying their role in the decision-making process. And then knowing what to do if they're not one of the top 3.
And what is the third step here?
The third step is extremely, is going to be extremely controversial, because I don't know about you, but every sales manager I ever had when I was started in sales and moving through the chains and things of that nature, they always say, don't bring up price till after the presentation. And they always say, like, don't talk about price, just have a wow of a presentation. And then when you hit them with the price, there's going to be so much value there. They're going to be, oh my God, it's only that much. And then they buy. And that's we all know that that's BS, right? And the other problem, if you don't bring up price, there's a couple of problems if you don't bring up price beforehand. One, half the time when you're giving your demo, your presentation, what do you think if they don't know the price, what do you think they're thinking about? I wonder how much this is going to cost me.
Right.
Right. So half the time they're not even paying attention to what you're saying. So with that, and then the other problem too, if you don't talk about price beforehand, is you can get to the end and give them the price and they go, well, it's not in the budget. And now you don't know if they're telling the truth or they're lying. Right.
Right.
It could be the truth, which means you wasted your time. You shouldn't have done this anyway, or they're lying and now you're kind of stuck and you have to try to find some fancy objection handling tool to overcome that, which it gets exhausting. If I pique interest, gain permission, continue the call, I ask my engager questions, ask the opportunity size questions, identify the pain point, and and I call it red light, green light, yellow, red light, yellow light, green light, right? So if I'm going through and I keep getting green lights, or if I get a yellow or red and I handle it and it turns green, I keep going, right? So if I get to the point where I got problem recognition, I identify their role, they're the right person to be speaking to, and the time frame's right. If I get that far, I should have a really good idea of what their problem is. And I should know my solution well enough to know that what the bottom number is going to be and what the top number is going to be.
Right.
So then I could say to somebody, right before I do the presentation, or I hand it off to somebody to do a demo, I could say, well, listen, before we go any further, it sounds like you're a really good fit for what we have to offer to help you solve X, Y, Z. typically our price range is going to be anywhere between $500 and $5,000. It won't be any less than 500, it won't be any more than 5,000. My question to you is, if you really love what we have to offer and you decide you want to move forward with it, is that doable for you? Is that within your price range? Right now they can only say three things: yes, no, or maybe. If it's a yes, I don't talk anymore. I just move on, or I hand it off, right? You got the green light, move on. Because now they can't come back and say it's not in the budget later when you go for a close. You've taken that chess piece off the table, right? If they say no, I'll go, well, when you say no, do you mean no, you think you might be able to get something better for less elsewhere? Or do you mean no, I couldn't afford it if my life depended on it? Which no are we dealing with here? And if they go, no, I think I can get something better for less elsewhere, I go, you know what, you might be right. But my question was, if once you hear what we have to offer and see it in action, if you really love what it does and you decide you want to move forward with it, but the price is between this and this, is that doable for you in that scenario? And if they go, well, yeah, in that scenario it would be, okay, great. Then let me just do this. And then I just move on again. I ignore it, right?
But I think you're right. You're like Ross Perot once said, let's put that snake on the table. And that snake is price and budget.
Yeah, I mean, but you have to do things in order, right? So I don't talk about price until I fully understood who, because if they're an intern or they're too low in the chain, they might not be authorized to say it.
Yeah,
right?
The info gatherer doesn't need to know at this point.
Yeah, and even if I do have the right person, but we didn't establish the problem first, it doesn't matter what the price is.
Right.
So you have to do things in order. And if your sales are down, and you don't want to spend $50,000 a year or $50,000 to have a company come in and custom train your team, for a week and having them off the phones and all that stuff, there's a much easier solution. For a fraction of the cost, I have all this stuff laid out in e-learning is exploding. It's helping people. I mean, us salespeople, we have the attention span of a goldfish. Anything longer than an hour, we're going to fade out anyway, right? So when it comes to sales training, what's really working is short, bite-sized pieces of information on specific subjects of skills that they need to improve on, that they can access on their own. They don't need the oversight and all that stuff. They can access on their own, sharpen their skills, get on the phone and make it better. And that's what we've been doing. We've been, like we're the best kept secret, right? We've been doing it. When did we first do one of these videos? 12 years ago? Right. Something like that. So then we're still thriving. We got everybody from 3M all the way on down using it. So
once you're finished with qualifying, what's the final step here?
Well, so it depends. There's a lot of BDRs these days, right? So where they're business development, or the SDRs where they're handling inbound warm leads and they just want to pre-qualify and then send it off. Even if you do that, the account executives still need to know that they can't just jump right into the demo or what have you. They should back up and just confirm a few things, right? So, but then when they do, when the qualifying is done, if they're the right person and is ready to set the demo or the presentation or what have you, whether you handle the sale from A to Z or you have to hand it off, you have to do a presentation. But the presentation, how many presentations have you sat through, Gerhard, where it was from the word go and they just went through the entire thing and like 90% of it you didn't even care about, right? There is definitely a way to do a presentation where you have these, what I call tie downs and check-ins to make sure they're with you. And you have to sharpen your listening skills to make sure that they're on point, and what to do if they sound off a little bit so that you can get them back on point. And then once that happens, you learn some of those presentation skills. Then you have to do a step that almost nobody knows exists in the sales process, and it's called closing on solution concept. You have to do this before you go for a close. So if I'm doing a presentation, I'm giving my tie downs, I'm getting green lights, or I get a yellow or red and I handle it, and it turns green, I keep going. And when I'm getting ready I'm ending the presentation, one of the things I want to ask is, listen, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, Gerhard, but let me just ask you this. I mean, what do you like best about what you've heard so far? And then just shut up and listen and take notes, because what they're going to do is they're going to tell you, I mean, what's more powerful, you telling them how great your product or service is, or them telling you what they really love, what they just heard, right? They're selling themselves. Yeah. And so you take those notes, and if you're getting positive feedback, and again, as long as you did not skip steps earlier in the sales process, right? You qualify on price, you qualify on the role, you got the problem established, right? We're just going in reverse order. If you got all that, when you get to the presentation, you ask that question, they give you positive feedback, and then you just go, well, does this sound like what you're looking for? Yeah, it does. Well, listen, I'd really love to run your business. Other than price, or anything else stopping us from moving forward now? I mean, now you're positioning it ready for the close. And then if they go, well, I have to take it to the board, or I have to do this, as long as you ask that question, you know, their purchasing process question, which is part of the qualifying, which is in between identifying their role and then the pricing. If, as long as it matches up with what they say, you know, they're telling the truth, and then you just follow the process. You're going to shorten the sales cycle. And now when you're off that call and the manager comes over and says, hey, that call sounded great, where are we? The salesperson is going to be able to do, we have this, and this, and this is what happens next. Too many times a sales manager will go, hey, you're on that call for a while, you know, so why didn't they buy now? Well, they want me to call them next week. Okay, but why didn't they buy now? I don't know, but they're really excited about it. Okay, but why didn't they buy now? I don't know. Right? And then it's a lost opportunity. Everybody's upset. And that's what happens when you have Captain Wingets and you don't provide them with the tools to quickly learn the right steps in the sales process. And it's really just getting back to basics, but I'm just shocked at how many salespeople, even if it's like 5-10 years, don't have the back to basics down. And that's what we do.
So
we help them with that.
I have a very important question.
Sure.
Obviously, salespeople need to follow a process.
Yeah.
And there are two parts to training. One is get salespeople to understand the process, but also they need to trust the process. How do you get salespeople to trust the process so that they can follow it?
Oh, that's the easy part. Because what, you know, so first of all, what I tell a lot of people, look, I'll give you the first course for free. Just take the first course. It'll show you how to create an opening value statement. What I hear is hey, we're getting more people wanting to take our calls and do, you know, they're saying yes. We don't know what to do next. We don't, you know, what's the next step? We're like, we're fumbling, right? So once you show them this is the thing with salespeople. When you show somebody that something and you explain the right way and it's solid, rock solid advice and they use it and it's being successful, then they're all in. Like how many times had we, when we were young sales reps, trying to learn from somebody else, you get a top sales rep say, oh, do this. You take it, you run, you try it 10 times, it works once. You go, it didn't work for the most part, right? And then it's because you took what they said, but you used it in the wrong scenario, right? So that's why the sales pieces have to be laid out in the right order. And if you follow my process, when you get to the end, you go for a close, you're either getting a deal or you're going to get a real objection that you need to overcome. You're not going to hear, I have to check with my boss, or it's not in the budget, or all the other common stuff that you hear, because I covered that early on. And I never even got to that point unless we established a problem.
Michael,
do
you have a process map that you visually laid out?
Yeah, it's in the course. They print it out when they log in. It's one of the first things in the first chapter.
All right. Can we get a download of that and put it in the video?
I think we can. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
awesome.
I would love to.
I think it's what you're saying is rock solid, and we can edit this and create a visual and show the progression of the process. So that would be a little bit of a longer video. Maybe we do 2 videos where we have a short teaser and then sort of self-education video where people learn A, the process, and B, understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Absolutely. I think this will help a lot of people. I mean, it made all the difference to me and myself as a straight commission sales rep. I mean, I would be lost without this process. I would never have achieved the amount of success I had without it.
Well, thank you, Michael, for educating us. Where can people find more?
SalesBuzz.com.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.